Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Or the Discord. We also have a Discord where we do regular listen parties at 7 p.m. Eastern on Sunday nights.
Yes.
Before we get into the show, this is the trigger warning. We're going to be talking about horror culture and horror topics, which could involve sensitive subjects such as child abuse, rape, murder. There will be F-bombs. F-bombs are allowed past this point, so you can fuck away and say fuck.
Fuck.
But with that out of the way, today we have with us Mr. Jose Prendez, writer, producer, and director, best known for such works as Blood Brothers, Headless Horseman, and The Haunting of Whaley House. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hello.
Thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. I'm honored. I always get a kick out of talking movies with like-minded individuals. So thank you so much for including me in the menagerie of guests here.
Our pleasure. I hate to admit this because I normally write down a note about who, like if we get introduced to somebody or suggested, I'd normally make a note to write them down, and either I'd fail to do so or maybe I deleted the document improperly or something like that. But somebody did recommend you, and I just can't remember who.
That's great.
Yeah, I know, right? Before we kick it off, do you want to share anything that you're currently working on?
Yeah, actually, 2023 is going to be incredibly busy. I've got potentially 3 movies in the pipeline, with 2 with green lights, 1 with a potential green light in, oh my God, a handful of weeks. I'm going to be making a movie for Full Moon Studios, which we'll discuss when we get into my backstory, but Full Moon means a lot to me. So I'll be making the next installment in the Puppet Master franchise. We're shooting that early May. And then in June, I'll be shooting a demonic possession movie. And then the third one I can't talk about because it's not really, a done deal yet. But yeah, this is probably my busiest year when it comes to filmmaking.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, congrats on that. Full Moon's, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's start with childhood. What are some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Well, I had a weird childhood. Certainly not an ideal one. I'm sure everyone, would say that. But when I was 5 years old, I lost both my parents, and being orphaned is never a good thing. And having it happen at such a young age, when things aren't 100% formed in your mind, and your emotional connections to the world aren't really there yet, was difficult. And I was set adrift in a way, at least that's how I like to put it. I was luckily taken in by godparents who I now consider my mother and father. They're still with me, and I love them dearly. But it was one of those things where I was an only child. I was orphaned. I was brought into this family who they were loving and supporting to me, but I always felt like the other. I always felt like my godparents were older, so they were already, past their 50s when they took me in. So they had kids of their own who had been grown at that point. So I was sort of this, last minute addition to the family. And early on, I knew I had to sort of take care of myself. I had to kind of figure my own shit out in a way. And I found movies, and I found books, and I found this magical world where anything and everything is possible. And I remember one of the memories I have with my father when he was still alive was we went to see Superman 2. And I think I was more blown away by how the audience reacted to the movie I love the movie, but I was so swept away by the magic of it. Everybody clapping and cheering, and it just felt like this beautiful communal experience. And I think even, I don't know, I must have been 4 or something. I knew, I was like, wow, movies. What is this? What is this magic that, like Harry Potter getting the letter, like, what is this Hogwarts kind of place? And, early on, I know I wanted to do movies. I wanted to be an actor at first, but the more I got into learning about movies and seeing movies, and again, my first mention of Full Moon, renting a full moon movie, they were the first people to do behind the scenes. You know, they had this thing called Video Zone at the end of their VHS tapes, and you got to see them making a movie, and it looked so goddamn fun. I was like, fuck, man, the real powers behind the scenes, being the director, being the writer, that's what I want to do. So through tragedy, I found my calling, and I've never abandoned it since, even though it's been incredibly difficult. Honestly, it's one of those things where people say, hey, should I get into art? You know, should I get into filmmaking? It's one of those things that if you have to ask, then no. You feel it. You can't do anything. There's nothing I would rather do. There's nothing I can't do it. I'm terrible at math. My wife is the math person in the house, you know, so it's the only thing I ever want to do is related to movies, and I've dedicated my soul to it.
Off topic, but I've always loved the phrase, there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who can't do math and those who take care of them.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, very true. Very true.
So glad that you have somebody who can help you with that.
Yes.
These Full Moon Video Zone videos that you were watching, do you remember what some of the early ones were that you were renting?
Absolutely. The first one I rented was a little movie called Transfers 2, which, you know, in retrospect, it's not a great movie. And when I tell people that Transfers 2 is the reason I make movies, they, you know, I've said this to Charlie Band, and he's like, Transfers 2? You know, and he directed, that's his movie. You know,
he's like, really, that one?
Did I tell you what not to do?
So, you know, it's like there was something about that movie. Like it wasn't necessarily the plot, but it was a combination. And again, this is what movie magic is all about. It's the combination of elements, the cast, you know, the way it's put together, the music, the pacing, all these little beautiful little elements, just the way a character delivers a line that maybe somebody else would butcher, but the way this person said it is magic. That movie has all those little elements. Then on top of that, it was the first behind the scenes I really ever saw. And it looked like so much fun. They were all laughing and you know, just having the most amazing time creating this wonderful little movie. And it spoke to me. I was like, man, I want to be a part of it. That looks so, you know, so great. So yeah, Transfers 2 was the first one. And then basically everything else they put out had behind the scenes. And I would watch them religiously, and I became addicted to Full Moon. So that right now, being able to make a Full Moon movie, it's like coming full circle, you know?
Yeah,
right.
It's like a childhood dream come true.
Yeah.
Literally.
And it was childhood at this point, right? Still?
Yes.
So Superman 2, Transfers 2, do you have a thing for sequels?
You know, I actually, it's interesting. I kind of do. But I think that's just the nature of the beast, especially when we're talking horror movies. I think, you know, for the most part, obviously the originals are sacrosanct, but sometimes the sequels could be just as good or even better or more rewarding. So, yeah, I'm certainly not one of those people that is against the sequel, but I think at some point you kind of have to let the story die. And I do think sometimes the sequel will kind of like kill a thing. I mean, look at a season of television. You know, yeah, great first 2 seasons, but then almost every show will inevitably fall into garbage. Game of Thrones. I mean, the list goes on and on.
I was going to say that 8th season, but yeah.
Right. You know, so it's like at some point you have to find. Look, things are fine. Stories are finite. They're not supposed to go on forever. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah.
And I'm very scared for Indiana Jones 5. But you know, it's the nature of the business. If it's successful, a sequel will come out. But I'm not necessarily a hater, but I do believe stories should be allowed to die. You know, hopefully in triumph.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as a child, did you participate in Halloween at all?
Oh my God, yeah. It's still my favorite holiday. I love it so much. It's like I said, I embraced horror because having death be such a part of your life at a young age, it's and I want to get morose here, but I do think kind of morbidly at times, and I do consider things. I spoke about the finiteness of stories, and life is finite, and I worry about death. And that's something I think about quite often. I'm a father, and I worry like one day I won't be here for them. and or potentially, tragically, they may not be here for me. So I think about that, and that's definitely something that fuels me. But Halloween and horror movies allows people to have power over that fear of death, the fear of the dark, which, maybe for the rest of the year we can be scared of the dark and we sleep with all the lights on. But for Halloween, we have the power, in a movie. What makes horror movies, I think, so satisfying and so popular is the fact that even though these characters are facing these overwhelming odds, there will be a hero. There is a final girl. There is a final boy, and it's that triumph. It's Rocky. It's Rocky for horror movie. Horror is basically, it's a triumphant journey from the bottom to the top, and no matter what the circumstances are, the hero will most likely survive. And then, if you're talking about horror icons, then you get into a whole different realm where it's like, it's okay that Jason's still alive. It's okay that Freddy's going to keep coming back. It's okay that Chucky's coming back, because now it's the Frankenstein thing where we love them. We care about them. We want to have plushies of them. We want to have posters and little toys, because now we've embraced them as totems for fear, and they're not scary anymore. Now they're our buddies. Now we can have I have a little Jason plushie that, like, he dances around to Thriller. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like having that, power over the enemy is what makes horror, I think, such a powerful art form. And Halloween is sort of an embodiment of it. Everybody gets to not be afraid. Everybody gets to face their fears. Everybody gets to, go out and be the scary thing, and you get fucking candy for it. That's amazing. That's what a wonderful thing. It's and I think there's so much power in that holiday, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily notice that, but I certainly, at an early age, absolutely embraced it. And as a father, my kids are huge Halloween geeks. We decorate the house every year, all that stuff. So yeah, as a kid, Halloween and me, I wanted to extend it as far as I could. I wanted to have Halloween every day if possible. And I guess if you watch a horror movie every day, then you can have a little bit of that Halloween magic.
Did you have a favorite costume when you were a kid?
Yeah, Superman. I was Superman quite a bit.
Awesome.
How about a least favorite costume?
If it's least favorite, I don't remember it. I think
it's a valid point.
Right. I think at one point there's a picture of me wearing a Mighty Mouse costume. I don't know if you guys remember Mighty Mouse, but he was basically he was basically Superman as a mouse. And maybe I was like, maybe I'll just do Superman again. I don't know if I need to be the mouse version, but
here I come to save the day.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Did you have any scary dreams when you were a kid? Maybe recurring dreams?
Yeah. No, and again, I don't know how much this is in terms of remembering it as a child, but I think being an orphan, my biggest fear was abandonment. I mean, I guess which makes sense. And I would have a lot of dreams about being left alone or being ignored. I think being ignored was sort of a fear in general, because I always felt like the outsider. And I think, again, that's why horror speaks to me. But yeah, I guess nothing specifically that comes to mind, like, oh, this one time, whatever. I don't really have any specifics to draw from, but certainly a lot of fear, a lot of dreams about being abandoned or being forgotten, or, people that I thought loved me kind of turning their back on me. And I think that's continued throughout my life. I think that's certainly, the imposter syndrome, I think that's certainly fed into my dreams.
Okay. Not every question is going to hit. We ask some of them just because you never know what's going to come up. Obviously, some of the stuff we've already talked about could lead into this next one, but was there ever a time when you were actually terrified of something in real life as a child? That's
it's an interesting question. Honestly, I think probably if I were to look at it objectively, I was probably terrified of losing my godparents. Like, if my parents had just passed away, and what if they go? Where do what happens to me? Where do I go? So I think I never had nightmares in the sense of like Freddy Krueger or horror movies and things like that. So I wasn't necessarily terrified of scary movies. To me, they were always comforting. To me, they were always sort of this lovely escape from the world. Because other people, I think mainly because my family's Cuban and I grew up in a very strict Catholic family, and to them scary movies are like, ooh, scary movies, or you can't watch scary movies, it's gonna mess you up. So I kind of felt like ha ha ha, they don't affect me, you weaklings. You know what I mean? And so I felt like I was never worried about horror as in terms of a source of nightmares. It was more of the reality of the world and fear of death and things like that. I think that's probably where I would lean when it comes to true childhood fears.
Okay. The reason that I said that is because, we hadn't talked about it much yet at this point, and for all I knew, maybe you were with your parents when you lost them, and that could have been some pretty terrifying shit. Sounds like that was not the case, which is probably a good thing.
Yes.
All things considered. Flipping the question around, was there ever a time in your childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
It sounds like a broken record, but watching
horror movies.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, just watching scary movies. I really liked it. I really, and it's funny because you think, oh man, people who watch scary movies are probably really weird. But if you go to a horror convention, some of the nicest people in the world, are horror fans or even the horror actors, just the most gentle people on earth. And I think it's because we know it's pretend. We know it's make believe and that it's fun and that it's safe. So yeah, that's my short answer is movies.
Okay. Do you remember any other horror movies that really spoke to you in your childhood?
I grew up in the 80s, man. I'm a child of the 80s, and to me the 80s was a fucking golden age of cinema. Goonies, all the Lost Boys, the Child's Play franchise is one of my absolute favorites. I think a perfect combination of childhood fears and a phenomenal main villain. So I mean, yeah, the Child's Play franchise, Monster Squad is another huge movie for me. One that I watched. I mean, I've probably seen that over 100 times, and it left such an it is one of those movies where in later life I got to meet the director, and he's like, "Yeah, the movie was a bomb. It did not do well." And it's so crushing to hear because I just think it's a perfect movie. But at the time, I guess he was saying people didn't know if it was for kids or for adults, which is fucking bullshit. I mean, I think it's for everybody, but whatever.
Yeah.
I love that movie to death. And that movie, again, is a template of like what a movie should have. It should have real stakes, real characters, a real connection, real friendships between these people that are facing these obstacles and practical effects. I mean, nowadays practical effects are few and far between, but it is what it is. Yeah, if I were to pick another movie that 100% exemplifies my childhood growing up, Monster Squad. That to me, I think is a pretty perfect film. I mean, now looking back at it, if I put on my filmmaker hat, there's a lot of weird things like, why does Dracula have a car? But whatever.
Yeah. It's modern Dracula.
Yeah.
Modern for that time, anyway.
Right. So I just kind of like try to shut that part off in my brain when I watch it nowadays. But at the time, it was a masterful movie, and really just kind of like, oh God, I want to do this. And Lost Boys, I mean, the Frog Brothers, it was during the Coruscants. They were in almost every other movie. And
Coruscants, I like that.
And they were in every other movie. Like, oh shit, oh man, Dream a Little Dream, and all this stuff. It's like, gosh, I just want to be a part of it. I wanted it so bad in my bones, and I was aching to be a part of it. And being I grew up in Miami. Again in a predominantly Spanish household, it wasn't a thing where like, I wasn't necessarily going to be set up for it. I had to do it no matter what, and so I had to force myself to find a way to break out of it. But yeah, the 80s was a big time for me. Pretty much everything that came out of the 80s, I'm a big fan of. To my mind, it's the one decade that has aged well to the point that it's coming back. The 90s, I think, hasn't aged well, but we'll get to the 90s.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Monster Squad for a minute, because you were talking about high stakes and friendship. At least that's what I thought I heard.
Yeah.
But when you talk about it being like so important to your development, I guess maybe I'm seeing like a connection between the friendships and, sort of the flip side of the coin of, always feeling like you were quote unquote the other, like, so you'd have like this, like, fears and desires often come in matching pairs. So like if you have a concern about feeling like an outcast, then you would maybe desire to be part of a group. Do you think it's that, or do you think there was something else beside that?
No, I mean, I think that's accurate for almost the entire run of the 80s. Look at the Goonies. They were all kind of outsider kids. The Lost Boys, they're the vampires, but the Frog Brothers and I'm blanking on his name, but Corey Haim's character, like they were the outsiders. They were the weirdos. So, and the Monster Squad, they were all just, friends who liked scary stuff and weren't bothered by horror movies. The Monster Squad begins, we meet our heroes. They're being dressed down by the principal, and the principal's like, you can't draw, spiders with human heads in class. And these kids are like, it's fun, it's cool. And it's like, oh, that speaks to me. That's what I do with my friends. So absolutely, I think that's what horror does. Horror builds that community with other like-minded other like-minded outsiders who band together, and together we are strong. And there's no other genre that has that community. Like, you don't see action movie conventions or comedy conventions.
There's not rom-com conventions.
No, they haven't made those yet. But you see sci-fi and you see horror, because those are the two that, like, the outsiders can come together, and the outsiders get to be a part of the magic, get to create their own worlds. And that's beautiful. So growing up in the 80s is, I think, it was a magical time because it really set that community in motion, I guess, because that's when conventions really started, like late 70s into the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Is when the convention culture started, because the fans were like, oh shit, there's other weirdos out there who like this stuff, who laugh at people being killed in slasher movies instead of like, oh my God, this is horrifying. We don't close our eyes, we rewind,
We zoom in.
Yeah,
hence.
Exactly.
I'll just say that principal is very lucky that he didn't have Chris in that group, because Chris would have just been like, you don't like me drawing that? Fine, I'll draw dicks.
Oh, please. It would have been teeth and eyeballs. Just mass amounts of chaotic masses of teeth and eyeballs.
Oh, Jesus. There you go.
And dicks.
That was my friend John. He drew dicks all over everything, including walls. It's funny you did bring up the spider thing too, because one thing that I just kept thinking as you were describing this is it's like the contrast I hear about with DC characters versus Marvel characters. Like, most DC characters are perfect, iconic beings that people should aspire to be like, and they had like some background where they were raised by a distant alien race, like Superman. But then with Marvel, you have characters like Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and there's like several books on the topic, but most DC characters are iconic and to be looked up to, whereas most Marvel characters are flawed and almost normal teenagers that have something happen to them, and how they still have to deal with the day-to-day life of being the outsider and being the nerd kid that no one likes, but then they're given this way to fix it in the fact that they now have superpowers. So it's kind of like a lot of the 80s movies pandered the same way to the same demographic of people that are considered abnormal or weird or outsiders, and a story where you have a group of them come together as friends.
Yeah, it's interesting. My daughter's a big Marvel person. I'm a DC guy. I even have a Superman tattoo. And
nice. I like them both, for the record.
Oh, there you go. So when people ask, well, what do you like about Superman? He's so boring. I mean, honestly, I think it's as simple as the fact that, well, he's an orphan. Yeah.
I can see. I can relate to him.
Completely forgot about that until you mentioned that.
Superman is an orphan, and he's got all this, incredible power. But honestly, he's doing it because he wants to prove himself to the world. He goes, "Hey, I know I'm not from here, but I'm going to help you guys. I'm going to do my best to, to save my adopted home." And maybe it's as simple as that. And Batman's an orphan. So while while Superman looks like, the ideal, he's a broken individual who is, dealing with a lot of trauma, and the best thing he can do is save others with the hope that, he can sort of like, not necessarily redeem himself, but certainly earn his place in the world. And I think that spoke to me quite a bit.
I mean, he wants to save others from his own pain.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I even think he said that about one of the Robins, that he took him, quote unquote, under his wing, not to train him to become another Batman, but to keep him from becoming another Batman.
There you go. Yeah.
A lot of our guests have reported there being a dividing line where prior to this whatever event, they were afraid of horror, and then after whatever event, they started to see the entertainment value of it. And yet, all the things that we've listed here, Goonies, Lost Boys, mainly Chucky and Monster Squad, like these are all seem to be enjoyable things for you. You haven't talked about there being anything that was like, no, this is just straight up terrifying to me. Was there something predating these things that you found pleasure in that scared you, or was it just always pleasure?
Oh, I've never found scary movies scary, but there is one movie that really freaked me out, and it's only because it was based on a true story. Another thing that I really loved, I guess just as a side effect of being into horror movies and wanting there to be, magic and real myth in the world, is I'm a big fan of the paranormal. And I'm actually, and we'll touch on it later probably, but I'm an amateur ghost hunter. And I've studied this, for decades now, and I'm really big into, cryptozoology and Bigfoot and UFOs and ufology. And there was a movie that came out, I think it was the 80s, called Communion, with Christopher Walken. This movie freaked me the shit out. And it's the one movie when people ask me what's the scariest movie you ever seen, I go, it's Communion with Christopher Walken, because it's the true life story of a guy named Whitley Strieber, who's actually a famous novelist, and then this happened to him, and then so he wrote more. They started writing novels about, or nonfiction books about it. He's a novelist in New York who is abducted by aliens, and the movie is so frightening. There's one moment that even now I feel like getting goosebumps just thinking about the scene. He's laying in bed, and he's kind of sitting up in bed, and his bedroom door creaks open, and you don't see anything behind the door. And Christopher Walken's like, "Who's there? Come on out. Who's there? I hear you. What's behind the door?" I paraphrase, but that's basically what he says. And then this absolutely terrifying alien face peeks out around the corner. And I remember my blood ran cold. And I'm watching this.
I'm getting chills now just in the description of this. I've known of this movie for a while, but never seen it. But like, was there also, because I'm assuming this is pre-jump scare era, no stinger or jump scare, just a slow creep alien head creeps around the door?
Oh, you gotta watch it.
It's not human.
Yeah, no, you gotta watch this thing. It just came out on Blu-ray, by the way. So good. Yeah, slow creep, kind of a drone in the music. So it's just like, oh, and then this thing kind of like slowly creeps out, and it's like the traditional kind of gray alien. It's kind of beige, but that kind of big eyes kind of alien. And I'm sitting, I'm watching it on HBO in my parents' bed. The lights are off, and I look over at the bedroom door, and it's halfway creaked open. I'm like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. I don't know. That moment has stayed with me, and it's one of the and to this day, I always want to do something like that. I've never been able to in one of my movies, to have a moment of pure terror like that, where it's not like, oh, jump scare, bloody guy hiding in the closet or whatever. It's just this slow reveal of this absolutely inhuman creature that you have no idea why it's there or what it's going to do. And that movie absolutely terrified me. That's the one movie that really literally I don't have any memories of if it moved me to tears, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was moved to tears by how terrified I was at that moment. Yeah, that movie's fucked.
I know it's come up on at least one of our other calls, but I can't remember who brought it up.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah.
Do you remember how old you were when you saw that?
I don't. I'm bad with dates and ages, but I would imagine a teenager.
Okay.
Maybe 14. I don't know.
All right. You mentioned, being interested in the paranormal and amateur ghost hunter, and you live in. I think he also lives in California.
Yes.
Do you know who Steve Barton is?
I do know Steve. Yes.
Okay.
Because I think he also was big into the paranormal and has also done ghost hunting.
Yeah, I've actually gone ghost hunting with him. I took him on a haunted hike one night. Yeah.
Nice.
Nice.
Funny. Let's see. I wonder if he was the one that suggested you.
It might have been. He might have mentioned that hike.
Yeah.
Now that I think of it.
Let's see. Okay, so I think that covered everything in childhood years. Let's jump down to the teenage years. You did mention communion. Was there anything else that really stood out to you in your teenage years in terms of horror? Books, movies, TV shows, whatever?
I read a lot. I was very shy. I still am for the most part. And I wasn't, I wasn't one of those kids who I was obviously super into girls, but I'm not going to talk to a girl. They're going to laugh at me. So I spent my days, working on learning how to script write, I should say. So I read a lot of script writing books, and I wrote novels, and I read a lot. Dean Koontz, Stephen King. That was my Stephen King, Dean Koontz phase. So I read pretty much everything they put out. I think I prefer Dean Koontz over Stephen King, but Stephen King's certainly the one that got more famous. But in terms of books, I think Dean Koontz really had more muscular stories. I think Stephen King just kind of took too long to get to the point, but
yeah, they're always a bit of a slow burn.
Yeah.
Favorite Koontz book from that period?
I believe it's called Darkness Falls. I might or something like that. I might have the name mistaken because there's so many movies with that. Or there's a movie that has a similar title. But it's called Darkness Falls or Darkness or something like that. And it's, from what I recall, an incredibly exciting book about monsters running amok in New York during a blizzard, I believe. Really good stuff. Really enjoyable. I really, really like that one. And
what do you like about it?
I just wanted a good goddamn monster book. All these were alcoholic dad. All right.
Yeah, the real monster is Old Man Craggedy, and they pulled the head off. Yeah, but yeah. Sometimes you just want a monster movie.
Yeah, and I'm like, damn, okay, so this is fucking creatures. Oh shit, okay. So it was just exactly kind of what I wanted. I really fucked up Gremlins kind of a story, and that book delivered. But I think to me the 90s really is exemplified by one movie that to this day is my absolute favorite slasher movie. And is the only movie that really gives Jaws a run. I haven't even talked about Jaws, actually, which is technically my favorite horror movie. I guess it left an indelible imprint on me because I hate the ocean, and I will, and even though I grew up in Miami, I abhorred the ocean and never wanted to hang out on the beach. Jaws has definitely left an imprint on me, but the one that gives Jaws a run for its money is Scream. I love that movie. To me, it's a perfect movie, and it's probably the movie I've seen the most in my life when it comes to horror. There's another movie that really kind of gives it a run for its money when it comes to the one I've seen the most, but it's not horror. But the 90s for me is all about Scream and the power of that movie and how perfect of a love letter it is to scary movies and to horror fans.
Yeah. It's definitely an homage to the slasher.
Oh yeah,
that's sure.
I think, and it's a movie that has aged incredibly well. I mean, we just had the 6th installment, so I Scream meant a lot to me. So if I had to pick, one movie out of the 90s, absolutely it would be Scream. I honestly can't even think of another movie in the 90s. If you ask me, just so I can't think of another movie from the 90s. Yeah, Scream was a big deal.
I think you were also about to mention Stephen King's It.
The book. I really love that book. My first 1,000-page book I ever read, and I was really blown away by that book. And the miniseries is really good too. But I think think that's actually that might be 90s. I don't remember. I'm bad with dates, but
I think that was 90s.
Was it? Yeah,
I think
probably
the
90s.
miniseries was 90s. I think the book probably came out in the 80s.
Yeah, the book was old. Yeah.
What do you think was unique or special about it?
Well, again, it plays on that whole '80s thing about the friendships and the unknown fear, and I love the fact that it is unnameable, unknowable. It is everything and nothing. I mean, the fact that by the end, I think everyone sort of feels the weak reveal that it's just a giant alien spider is kind of like, oh, by the way, spoilers, but.
In case you didn't know,
right?
It's been out for a little bit.
Yeah. I feel most people are like, wait, what? But it's one of those things. Again, when you have something like that, you have to explain it, and I think that's why most M. Night Shyamalan movies fall apart. Like, oh, it's a great setup, but when you have to explain it, it's kind of like, all right, dude, that's kind of stupid. But it's the nature of the beast. When you have the unknowable and you want it to be known, maybe it's not exactly what you think it is. And it's tricky. It's just sort of a tricky part of the mechanics of cinema.
Yeah, it's a dangerous game. You create it just by having that theme in general. You have the unnameable or the unknowable, and people are going to want to know that. And that's the dangerous part. Is do you deliver on what everyone wants to think that unknowable thing is going to be? And you're going to have people that are disappointed because they had a different idea of it in their head. Right.
Well, like Halloween, Halloween 1, he was just a boogeyman, picking people at random. Then the second one, which I'm a big fan of the second one. The second one, they gave him a backstory. Oh, well, he's actually, Laurie Strode's brother. And that's why he targeted that area. But a lot of people don't like that, which I don't know why. I was like, I'm fine with it. But it's that explanation. It's never going to be as good as the mystery, but a lot of people hate mysteries, so it's kind of a double-edged sword.
You can't win, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. How about reoccurring dreams in your teenage years?
I can't think of any. I did mostly just, again, sort of the same old, being forgotten, being ignored, right. Feeling like I failed. I mean, I think a big part of my life, I've always felt like I owed my parents to live as fully as I could because I was living for all of us. And, my father was a writer. And this is something actually that I didn't discover until my teenage years. I knew my dad he was a political prisoner in Cuba. He was a lawyer and he opposed Castro and he ended up in jail. And when he was released, that's when he and my mother fled so that I could be born, in the States and not, under Castro. So I didn't know much about him until later I found out, he was a writer and he loved to write stories and he wrote a book all about his time and all this stuff. And I never really made that connection. I didn't know where this kind of like passion came from, and knowing that almost redeemed it even more. Like, well, shit, yeah, I gotta be creative. My dad was creative, of course, it's in my blood. But then that also sort of lit the fire under me, and I've been a very driven individual since I was a kid because probably more than most of my friends who had no idea what they wanted to do. Actually, all of my really close friends, I love them dearly, but they're still very lost, and they still don't really know what they want to do, even into their 40s, and that's okay. But it's, for me, I've always known 100% what I wanted to do, and reinvigorated by the fact that my dad was creative, and like, well, I gotta write twice as hard. I gotta create twice as hard so that he can live through me, and that my mom could see that it was worth having me, and all this stuff. So,
out of curiosity,
yeah.
Go ahead. No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So, it maybe my nightmares would focus around failing, and I think that was probably predominantly where I was on that verge of becoming an adult. Like, well, I could leave the house and make my own way. I think maybe my fears probably were focused around that. That's what, if I had any nightmares, it would be around those topics.
I was just curious if you managed to track down your father's book.
I do. I have it. I was able to get the manuscript, but it's such an emotional thing that it's hard for me to look through it. And one day, I one of my big goals is to get it published for him.
Oh, it wasn't published. I thought it was.
It was not. I just have his manuscript.
the fact that you managed to get his manuscript is even more impressive then. 'Cause
Yeah.
I thought it was
Yeah.
a book that you just, managed to go find a copy of.
Yeah.
But finding a manuscript where there's only the one copy,
Only the one. It was at my aunt's house in Puerto Rico, and it was one of those things where like we're looking for we're gonna find it, and they eventually did find it, and they sent it to me, and now it's here.
Nice.
But it's kind of I wouldn't say an albatross, but it's certainly something that's kind of weighs heavy on me because I tried to look through it. It's very emotional because it's his time in prison, and it's tough. It's tough to sort of revisit that and to connect with him through his words, and it's one of my Everests that I hope to conquer before I pass.
That's a good way to put it. When I was going through my counseling and therapy stuff, I wrote letters to multiple family members that I felt I had things that were left unsaid, both good and bad, things that, happy memories as well as unhappy ones. And part of the reason that I did that was because I had dated a girl earlier who had lost her father, but they had never gotten a chance to make amends before he passed away. And it really triggered very severe case of separation anxiety in her. And I remember thinking, God, I hope I never want to be in the same situation. And so when I had the opportunity, I made it a point to write those letters to those family members. But I didn't realize until after the fact that what I had done subconsciously is I had started with the easier ones that I wrote to certain members of the family. And I saved the last two for the ones that were the most difficult for me, emotionally speaking, because I needed, I guess, that experience of having written the earlier ones and learning how to process those emotions before I could work my way up to that one. So I like your analogy of it being your Everest. That's fitting.
I mean, honestly, we rarely get a chance to say goodbye, and that's one of the tragedies of life. I'm off to work, and then they're in a car accident, and you never really got a chance to hold their hand one last time or give them a hug. And it's a sobering thought. And so, whenever you get a chance, just give someone you love a hug. I mean, I think that at least you can have that final memory,
100%.
During your teens, was there a time when you felt completely calm or safe or at bliss?
Watching horror movies.
Not an uncommon answer, actually.
Yeah, and also at that point, like I said, my dad was very my foster dad was very technical, and he would buy everything. So we had the first VHS camera, at least certainly of like in our neighborhood. Nobody else had a camera, and he comes home and is like, "Hey, I bought a camera," and in my mind, I'm like, "Why did you buy a camera? You don't film, like it's not a thing that you would do." But in my mind, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm making movies. So I called up my friends, guys, I got a camera. Come over this weekend. We're making a movie. And so basically it became mine, and made movies. To me that was very a blissful time for me. I think to this day, one of my when you're in your element, when you feel like you're in the zone. For me, it's being on set. And specifically being in charge of a production and being a filmmaker, I love it so much. I love being able to, and it's not like I love being able to tell people what to do, but I love the fact that being the captain of the ship, and I consider myself a good captain. I say good morning to everybody. I learn everybody's name. I make sure everybody's having a good time. Hey, lunch is up. Make sure you get some lunch. I want you to eat. I'm like, I want to be like everybody's dad, because we're going to war, and I'm the general, and we have to make sure that everybody, all my soldiers are fed, all my soldiers are we're all following the same game plan. Oh God, that to me, that's such a joyful experience. So, in my teens, making movies with my friends, that to me was that, beyond just sitting in a room and reading and disappearing into a book or watching a movie. I think I discovered. Being able to actually make a filmmaking was a Zen experience. As difficult as it was, and still is, honestly, it's a joyful pain, and I love it.
You mentioned sort of getting a horror crew together, shall we say, friends that also loved horror in your teenage years. What's the story behind that?
It's nice when you can connect with people over something innocuous, seemingly innocuous anyway. Just like did you go? What'd you do this weekend? Oh, I went to the movies. Oh, me too. Oh, what'd you see? Oh, Ninja Turtles. Oh, when? I saw it too. What'd you think? Ninja Turtles was a big bonding film, and that's one of the reasons I have one of my dearest friends to this day that I've known since second grade. And so bonding over little things like that connects you to people because you kind of understand each other. Just sort of like how wrestling fans kind of like bond over sweaty people smacking each other. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's there's that subgroup just kind of comes together, and so you just you collect these people and you bond over these things, and then you say, hey, let's make our own version. Oh, that sounds amazing.
So in terms of maybe the top 2 or 3 things that jump to your mind in horror as an adult, what comes to mind?
One movie that really jumps out to me, and maybe I don't remember if this was teenage years or not, but a movie that doesn't get a lot of love, but I think it's such a beautiful movie because of its message is very simple, but is the movie Contact. I don't know if you guys have seen it with Jodie Foster.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
This movie, there's only a handful of movies that I've gone to the theater, and then as soon as it was over, I bought a ticket to watch it like immediately after. And Contact was one of those movies.
I think it's a roller coaster ride. One more time.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like I gotta. This movie is very special. Again, it's about a movie about a woman who's lost her father. And so she's sort of that orphan kind of motif is still in play, but it's about searching for meaning, searching for an answer in the world. And I think. At the end, people get disappointed because of the ending. I won't spoil it here, but to me, the ending isn't necessarily about like, oh, what do the aliens look like? It's what the message is, and I think it's such a powerful, moving movie, and the journey that that Ellie goes on, the character in the movie goes on, I think is powerful and very meaningful to me. A lot of my favorite movies are movies that are about the meaning of life, the message of life. It's a Wonderful Life is my number 1 favorite movie of all time. No, not a horror movie, but it's a movie I've probably watched the most, probably more than Scream. And it's, it goes without saying what that movie's about. Everybody's life is important. Everybody makes a difference. I think people forget that, and people tend to let their life sort of slip away sometimes. And I think it's important to be reminded, like, look, you're here to make a difference. If you think about the randomness of conception, 1 billion sperm, and the one that got in was you, and that there has to, and I think I'm more of an agnostic now in my older years than when I grew up Catholic, so I don't necessarily prescribe to any one belief, but as an artist, as a filmmaker, as a human being, part of me really wants to believe in magic and sort of that belief that things are meant to happen and we're all here for a reason. So I would always tend to lean toward movies that would sort of shine a light on that and say, hey, keep going. It's okay. It's okay. Hey, it's going to get tough, but it's going to be fine. You're going to be good. Arrival is another movie in my adulthood that I think really knocked my socks off.
Oh yeah,
powerful.
Especially on the second watching, after knowing the whole thing with her and her perception of time.
Yeah.
Trying to keep it spoiler light.
Oh yeah. No, I mean it's oh gosh. I mean it's a movie that, again, no spoilers, but the decision she makes to just experience life and knowing all that, it's just a reaffirmation of life and family and a journey is a journey no matter where it goes. It's powerful stuff. Most recently, Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Mm-hmm.
Such a beautiful testament to family and to life and to choice. And I think, I hope, people walked out of there thinking, maybe rethinking their choices and not giving up on themselves. And I think I haven't been able to make that movie mainly because most of the movies I get are, work for hire. But one of my dream goals is to make my feel good movie about life, and hopefully one day I'll get a chance to make that. Not horror related, but I think horror does allow you to experience that awfulness safely and survive. And I think that's cathartic and that's important. And hopefully will give you a new lease on life after watching a scary movie. At least that's the goal of the filmmaker. They're not there to just make you shit your pants. They want to entertain you and give you power over the dark. And I think every horror filmmaker has wanted that, even if they haven't necessarily said that out loud. I think you can easily see when a movie is just there to be gross and just to be, I'm going to show you guts and people vomiting and like, well, this is now you're just exploitation garbage. As a sense, you really aren't really offering anything here except wanting to be disgusting. But I think the truly transformational, transcendental horror movies are the ones that give us the safe out and let us walk away redeemed, that everything's going to be okay regardless of where we end up in the world. Everything is going to be okay. And I think that's real power, and that's the one thing I've looked for in my adult years. When I go to the movies, I want a happy ending, man. Life sucks. I want the happy
go to the
ending.
movie for the escape.
Yeah, exactly.
For Halloween, as an adult, do you dress up? Have a favorite costume?
My favorite, if I had one, it would be my first Halloween with my wife when we were dating. I said, she was my first girlfriend, and it was one of those things where I didn't really have. I mean, I had crushes on girls and things like that, but I was focused on movies, and I said, well, I'm going to meet my wife on a movie set, and I ended up I did. And our first Halloween together, I'm like, dress up sexy, wear something sexy. She shows up in this sexy witch costume, and I'm wearing like this inflatable sumo wrestler costume.
Okay.
And she's like, "Oh, what the hell? I thought you were gonna wear like."
Right, that's what I was laughing so hard.
You wear something sexy.
Yeah.
That's the joke. You're sexy, and I'm a giant inflatable sumo man. It's funny.
So that's my favorite. That's probably my favorite adult costume because I wore that. But yeah, no, Halloween.
She's like, I get ripped off.
Yeah, exactly. I loved it. But then like my fan, because it works on this like internal fan thing, my fan broke. So then I was just kind of like this, like, I looked like a fat dude who like lost all his weight like immediately or something.
Yeah, the lap belt surgery.
Yeah, exactly. It was like just like this wrinkly like prune guy. So it didn't work. That was great. But yeah, no, I still dress up every year. My kids dress up, and now that I own a home, we decorate the shit out of the front yard, and I love it. I still, to this day, I love it. My kids love it. They understand the magic of it, the power of Halloween, and it's a big deal for us. Absolutely.
Any recurring dreams as an adult?
The scariest thing you could ever do is become a parent.
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Because you think of and being creative, even worse. Because then you think of every scenario. Oh my God, they're gonna fall down the stairs. Oh my God, did I pick up the pencil from the ground? What if they pick up the pencil and they fall on the pencil? All these man. Probably the most.
On the flip side, that means that you're prepared.
You're right.
There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, put rubber bumpers on every goddamn corner. No, make sure that like. So I'm a very. I wouldn't say helicopter parent, but I'm certainly like, I see a lot of parents at the park and they're like just sitting down and the kids are running wild. Like, nah, man, I'm playing with my kids at the park. We're running around. We're playing Indiana Jones on the thing. We're doing this and that. I've got my eyes on them because you never know. And I've read a lot about getting kidnapped, going missing, all this stuff. It's like that freaks you out. So probably all my nightmares would be about things happening to my children. There's nothing more terrifying than losing a loved one, especially one that you created and is a part of you. Yeah, all my nightmares are about my children, something happening to them or related to them. So yeah, Yeah, all parent based.
That's come up on
Perfectly
a few interviews. Like the whole point about once you have a child, it's even harder to watch or read media about anything that happens to a child. Like it just becomes a completely different scenario then.
Oh, absolutely. I can't watch a movie where a child is in danger now. Not that I liked watching those in general, but
Well,
like,
yeah. But now it's just not an option, right?
oh yeah, no, like, and they do that a lot in foreign horror movies where they'll put like kids being abused or whatever. I'm like, nah, I can't. Nope, not watching it. And like, there is one horror movie that I will never watch because I just think it's horribly disgusting, and there's no reason to watch this movie. And that's a Serbian film.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Yep, I knew that was coming.
Nope, not for
the
me.
first 5 minutes, the first 1 minute, maybe. Yeah.
Not for me. There's no reason for me to watch it, and there's no desire either.
Can't say I disagree. I've never seen it, and I don't think I need to.
Nope.
Have you actually been terrified of something that happened in real life as an adult?
Thank God, thank the universe. I've never been put in a situation where my life has been in real danger, which I'm very lucky on that. I'm going to knock on wood over here.
No is a good answer.
Yes. So, no, I luckily not.
Good. A time in your adult life when you were completely calm or safe or at bliss? Watching horror movies?
Yeah, watching horror movies with my kids, I think, or just
now we add with the kids.
Yeah, with the kids.
Yeah,
exactly.
Now we got the combination of the two.
There you go.
It's perfect.
Let's see. Was there anything that we skipped for adults? No, I think that was all for that. All right. So the next two questions we normally ask at the same time because it could be the same movie for both or two different movies. And those two questions are, what's your favorite movie and what movie have you watched more times than any other? I think you said your favorite movie is A Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And I think you said that it might also be the one that you've watched more times than any other.
Yeah, It's Wonderful Life or Scream, I think, or actually Jaws too. It's kind of a toss up, but I think probably It's a Wonderful Life it is up there. Although, gosh, well now that I think about it, shit, you know what? Maybe Scream. I think Scream might have won it because my daughter's a huge Scream fan too, so I've watched it a ton of times with her. So, and I've only seen It's a Wonderful Life with them twice, so maybe Scream wins most times.
Okay.
Yeah, just by sheer numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like I think in another call it's come up as Disney cartoons or kids cartoon movies. Like, well, being a parent, you probably watched that over 100 times this month.
Yeah, well, it's funny. When I grew up, I never really watched cartoon movies. Like, I never watched any of the Disney things, growing up. Like, maybe in theaters, Beauty and the Beast or whatever. But I was never a cartoon guy until I got kids, and that's when I caught up on all that stuff.
Yep.
Do you see any kinds of common threads about what kind of horror you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, body horror?
I like I love slasher movies. I think slasher movies are probably my favorite horror subgenre. I love haunted houses too. I don't know what it is about slasher movies. I like that they're fun. I think horror should be fun. Going back to Monster Squad, it's a fun movie. You love spending time in that world, and it's how the characters are written and performed and all that stuff. Scream is a fun ass movie. It's a rewatchable movie. You wanna spend time with these guys because they're funny and they're lively, and you're just like, man, I wish I was friends with these guys. These are great. Two of them are murderers, but in general,
setting that
maybe
aside.
not those two.
Yeah, setting that aside, they're cool guys.
Not everybody's perfect.
Yeah. I think the slasher genre just kind of lends itself to being more fun. Like recently, a recent really fun franchise, the Happy Death Day movies are super fun. Those are just a blast. Slasher genre, I think, is absolutely my favorite. And then Haunted House, probably a close second. And then I really love just a good old fashioned monster, crazy ass monster movie. With some practical effects. That always puts a smile on my face.
Well, in terms of like the psychological side of things, just saying that something is fun, it's hard to pull something out of that,
right?
Say, without then delving into, well, what makes it fun? For Scream, let me scroll back up. You had talked about it being a love letter to horror movies and fans because there were all these references that you were familiar with.
Mm.
What about the other slashers that you enjoy? Do you see some sort of common element as to why you think those are fun?
Yeah, I think it's maybe laughing in the face of death kind of a thing.
Empowering.
Another good example. It's not a horror movie, but Big Trouble in Little China, or or Indiana Jones, Jake Speed. I'm trying to think of. I mean, these are kind of more like actiony type movies, but they have that devil may care attitude to the scariness, to the threat. And it's hard to have that in real life. In real life, you'd be like, oh fuck, oh shit, oh fuck, oh shit, but you can't make a movie with just people saying, oh fuck, oh shit. The fact that these characters can like be facing a threat but still have a smile, or a quip is. I'm trying to draw a parallel here. Maybe just something like the Rocky movies, where it's like a triumphant win. And it's it's a struggle, but we're with our hero, from early morning runs to smacking meat, punching. By the way, not jerking off for anybody. Who's
I clarify that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just in case you're like, wait, what? He goes,
I knew what
what
you meant.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you guys did. But everybody listening, like, wait, he goes, what? But I just that that kind of that triumphant attitude, like we're not gonna quit, we're not gonna stop. I think the best horror movies, the rewatchable ones, the fun ones, give you that endorphin rush of laughing in the face of danger. I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is the point where we would normally talk about giving you sort of a summary of the topics that we've heard coming up during this call, and then delve into those a little bit. For you, it seems like there's sort of like this progression, understandable one, that goes from dealing with the trauma that you've had to deal with and dealing with the family situation. You talked about Chucky and the Lost Boys and Stephen King's It, and how all of these had these outsider kids banding together for strength. There was even a comment you made about, feeling like you're this general when you're on the film set, and your soldiers going to war. In a sense, that's also banding together in a relationship sort of way. And that then kind of morphs into the empowerment stuff that has come up a lot. Power over the fear of death, having hope that people will survive, wish fulfillment, icons becoming totems that aren't scary anymore, having power over those things. Things are going to get tough, but keep going. Things will be redeemed, and you may transcend. So I think that's, like I say, a logical progression in the face of the things that need to be dealt with. The normal follow-up question here after giving the summary would be, do you have any idea why it is that those things are important to you? I think that's kind of self-explanatory at this point. So then the next follow-up question would be, why horror? Because couldn't you address some of these same kinds of topics in other genres? Particularly, for example, if you're talking about, banding together and finding strength and empowerment, obviously war movies and military movies, that's very common there. But is there something about horror that speaks to you as a genre that you find more direct or more fulfilling? Like, why horror?
Well, horror is everything. Horror is all the genres, and I think that gets lost. I mean, I love action movies too. I'm a big action movie fan, but action is limited to being sort of the action threat. Horror is everything. It's scary. It can be an action movie. It could be dramatic.
Mm-hmm.
It could be funny. It sort of touches on everything, and I think that's what makes it universal. I think horror plays well all over the world. For example, a comedy can't translate very well. Like, what's funny to us is probably not funny to people in Brazil or China. So comedy is limited. Drama is limited because it's usually about a certain thing. Oh, well, I've never been divorced, so that movie doesn't, that I can sympathize, but it doesn't really apply to me. Oh, I've never, luckily never lost a child, so that movie doesn't really apply to me. Like, oh, I wasn't, I dated one girl in my life, so movies about dating don't necessarily apply to me. I don't have heartbreak or anything to really deal with. So drama is very limiting as well. But everybody's fucking scared of a guy with a knife.
Right? Everyone's scared of something.
Yeah.
Fear is kind of like it's the math of universal languages. It's all back to math. It's all connected.
It's all connected, exactly. I'm sure there's a formula we could come up with. I'll ask my wife if she could come up with something.
I was
But
just about to say. Just about to say, ask the wife.
Yep. Yeah.
But no, it's funny you bring that up because it's like I think another one of our guests said the same thing. Like, you can add another genre flavor to any horror movie, but you can't add horror to another genre without
turning
it being
into horror. Yeah.
Right.
Without it turning into a horror. But then another thing that you said in relation to that is shit. What was it? It's 30 seconds ago. That fuck. Brain.
I hate when that happens.
Right?
I'm sure it was very good what I said.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like he said, that has come up in other calls, that horror is allowed to touch other genres pretty much at will, whereas other genres are not.
Yeah.
There you go. I got it. And it's that horror is universal. Like, you know, comedy is subjective. Romance is subjective. Each location, each person is going to have their own definition of it. But something that threatens your bodily harm or threatens you with bodily harm is pretty universal.
Yeah. Whether you want to face it or not, like, you can choose to, I'm not going to watch that because that looks scary. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But that's what the movie's there for. That you understand that.
Mission accomplished.
You know what I mean? You can, you can, there's a new rom-com. Well, I find none of the leads attractive, so I'm not going to watch that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where horror is like, if you want scary, you could do a horror Western, you could do a science fiction horror, Event Horizon, The Thing. You could do everything is encompassed within horror, and there's different levels of horror. You don't necessarily have to do blood and guts. A good example, like some of the old-fashioned ones, like The Uninvited or The Innocents. Even some old noir movies, like Leave Her to Heaven. That's a pretty terrifying movie, and it's a drama about a murderous, woman. Horror exists in the world, and for example, if you mentioned war's real, war's scary, war sucks, war's sad, it's tragic. Horror isn't real, but it still gives you everything that you get from a war movie. Either people banding together or the visceral thrill of seeing blood and guts and all this stuff. But it's safe. It's not real.
Exactly.
Nobody got hurt.
It's a safe sandbox experience of horror.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, last question. Is there anything that you've thought of that might be relevant that hasn't come up on the call? Maybe we talked about something and you thought of something and then the conversation took a left turn.
I tend to be very stream of conscience, so I don't know. It may have escaped. I'm sure we've addressed it, but I at the moment I can't think of anything.
That's fine. It's just like we said earlier, not every question is going to hit, and this one is just an opportunity because you never know if that were the case until you ask. So
right.
That one's usually a no. We're pretty thorough.
That's great.
Cool. Well, we appreciate your time. I mean, like you said, in your case, it seems, I don't want to say it's cut and dry because that almost like minimizes it, but like in your case, there are some very clear reasons for, the connections between the things that you enjoy, and it's very understandable. And that's part of the reason that we're doing this. I mean, I've always been a big believer that everybody makes sense. You just got to take the time to understand them.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put that. I've never heard that phrasing. I guess that's true. I mean, everybody has a reason, so
I will acknowledge not everybody has a good reason.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say, for example, that there aren't fans of horror movies that aren't serial killers. There might be, but the majority of them are not. And if you take a minute to figure that out, that the mainstream world does not need to be as worried about horror fans as I think many people in the mainstream world think they do.
Right.
There are no bodies in my crawl space. Absolutely none. I want this on record.
Thank you, Chris.
You don't have a crawl space. It's Florida. Who has a fucking crawl space in Florida?
Just got to throw that out there.
Yeah.
No, it's been a good talk. Like I say, in your case,
Yeah.
it's pretty self-evident, but it's still good to talk about these things because they're still human stories. I mean, this is just as much of a story, quote unquote, as the things that you put in your movies. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, again, going back to It's a Wonderful Life, everybody has a story. Everybody has everybody has a piece of the puzzle to the world in some way. I mean, at least I'd like to think that's the case. Things would feel even more chaotic than they are right now if it's literally just random nonsense. And I think I think that would be really tragic if that is the truth, because there's too much. The fact that art exists is proof that we're not just apes with crazy brains. That there's I'm not gonna say a spiritual side to it, but I feel like part of us understands that there may be
How
more
about spiritual but not religious?
Yeah, that's the way to do
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I kind of chuckled to myself a moment ago because I thought it'd be a funny tagline to say that we are the It's a Wonderful Life of horror podcasts.
There you go.
I don't hate it. I'm not okay with this.
It's not great because it takes a little explanation. That's all.
Yeah.
Gee, huh? Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Great
It was a pleasure.
talking. Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
And thank you to anybody else out there listening. If you like what we're doing, please tell a friend. Come visit us on horrormakeshappy.com. We got merch and you can be a Patreon subscriber. Oh, that reminds me. We need to give a shout out to our Patreon subscriber, Legion Podcasts. Thank you for your support.